Welcome to Founder Tactics, a podcast that dives into the strategy and serendipity behind successful businesses. I am your host, Julia Lucidi. Today, you'll be hearing a podcast recorded live at the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup. I sat down with David Gucker, the Chief Operating Officer and first employee at Vultr. David has spent the past 2 decades helping build one of the fastest growing independent cloud platforms in the world. They've raised over $330 million, built a multi-billion-dollar business, and served customers at massive scale. But honestly, what stood out the most about David was his humility. No ego, no hype, just a grounded, thoughtful operator who genuinely cares about people, culture, and building something meaningful. David dropped out of college and left a well-paying job to start working for a friend whose company was growing fast, and he never left. He dedicated his career to building what eventually became Vultr. He learned how to spot operational opportunities, how to stay strategic while also handling day-to-day execution, and make hard pivots when the market demands it. At one point, Vultr had to completely reposition, shifting from a startup-looking brand to something that corporate customers could trust. That transition wasn't easy, but it was pivotal, and it's a big part of why the company took off the way it did. So if you're a founder, an operator, or anyone building something over the long term, this conversation is for you. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast on whichever platform you're listening to us on now. Now let's dive in. Before we kind of dive into, these questions that I have laid out for us, I think it would be interesting for you to set the stage of what is Vultr doing in this moment and why is this line of work so important, even for the historical moment that tech is living, pivotal historical moment that tech is living because of AI.
Question has a lot of gravity. Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me. And just driving down from Palm Beach Gardens, it was really nice to stop at Fort Lauderdale and not be doing something in Miami. So, applause to the Fort Lauderdale community, tech community. I'm really happy that you guys are all here. So, I mean, this is all about you guys. So, if I start dragging on and I'm not engaging, just give me the Oscars music. So Vultr is a global cloud computing company. We started off more than 2 decades ago doing traditional web hosting and bare metal servers, where we would, just kind of build to suit, build a computer and put it, bring it to a data center, install it, and make it available to a customer on the internet. That sort of section of our business was fueled by just internet customers, websites and whatnot. And then at some point in our journey, we started catering to video game customers. The video game approach brought us into multiple locations, because you need low latency access to deliver good gameplay. So we noticed that some of our bare metal customers were handling the video game community. So we entered that market as well, and we did it a little bit better with a more professional kind of service offering and multiple locations. So we were pursuing those two businesses for a while. And then in 2014, we launched the Vultr brand. We saw companies like DigitalOcean and obviously AWS and others, and we were, tangentially related, but doing things in a more manual way. So we decided to launch the Vultr brand to do, virtual machines with a cloud-driven interface. We had the operating experience in data centers and also building our own control plane that served the video game market. So we took all of our expertise from these different domains, and we built Vultr from that. The other things have fallen by the wayside. We've aggregated everything into Vultr, but video gaming is still a big part of our DNA. And in 2021 or so, started delivering a GPU infrastructure to meet the needs of the now obvious AI explosion. So we were pretty early in that market. And that's, the funding that you mentioned is directly to go into our expansion in the AI infrastructure. So we compete with giants, right? We're the largest independently owned cloud computing company, which, independent means that we're not attached to a retail giant or a Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Word, right? We're totally independent. All we do is cloud. And we're privately held. So it's pretty cool that we could be focused on that. And we like to try to view ourselves as becoming a sort of a category defining operator, right? Where this is, because there's no other pure play cloud computing companies, and we intend to be that on a global scale. We're already a global company, but truly competing with the hyperscalers.
So this story started many, many years ago when a friend of yours started a company and there was an opportunity for you to join him. And you were employed at the time. You had a nice cushiony salary and there was an opportunity at half the pay and you said yes. What moved you to take on this high risk opportunity to start building Vulture?
Yeah, I'll tell a little bit of the story. Tell me to speed up. I need to, but so I went to, when I was a teenager, right? I was building computers and picking things apart, putting them back together, and then I bought my first PC when I was 14, and that turned into building and selling PCs to small offices. That was when doctors' offices and everything were on hard files. So I was helping it turn legal offices and doctors' offices does kind of digital by selling the PCs and helping move on to that as a teenager. So I thought I was, hot shit going into college orientation. And so I was 18, I went to college orientation and I met Dave Ananowski, who's the founder of the business. And he had already started a web hosting company. So, we're like, we do that thing that people do. We're trying to figure each other out. But
Measure each other.
measure each other up, yeah. But we clicked. We fast friends, right? We had just such aligned interest. We just, kind of birds of a feather, right? So we started as friends. I was learning about the things that he was doing, and he was learning about some of the things that I was doing. Around the end of high school, I went into telecom. A friend of mine got me a job, literally cleaning out the storage closets at a telecom company. But that quickly got me into a data center where I was, plugging in wires and troubleshooting things, and then that got me into kind of setting things up new and architecture, and it turns out I was pretty good at it. So as you said, I started making pretty good money even at a young age when I was, just in college. But my friendship with Dave, Ananowski was really good, and it was the internet side of things was really compelling. So I was in telecom and networking, but it was, kind of legacy stuff, but the internet was very interesting, and Dave had a lot to teach me. And, yeah, at one point, he decided to stop going to his day job, sort of just, the the business was making enough money on his own where he didn't need a salary from somebody else. And then a few months later, he offered me a job for roughly half of what I was making to go work for him full time as employee number one of what is now Vulture. And, my father is an entrepreneur. His father is an entrepreneur. It's in our sort of DNA to operate like that and take some risks. And at 21 years old, I didn't have kids or a wife or mortgage. I mean, it was all just the perfect appetite for risk. So I said, of course, I'll cut my salary in half and work for you, and we'll do this thing together because the synergy that he and I had together, how smart he is, how just what I felt I was capable of. I knew that we could do something special. I didn't know exactly what that was, but I felt it.
I find that entrepreneurs that have parents that were entrepreneurs really are very supported in taking that risk, even from just a confidence perspective in seeing an opportunity and jumping on that. So I think it's incredible that I didn't know that your dad was an entrepreneur. So that's a great example to have at home and such a point of encouragement.
They were comfortable with the business part of it, but not so much the dropping out of college part.
Oh,
Was not their favorite
so
thing.
you didn't finish college.
No, we got about 3 semesters on that all.
That's awesome. I
Same
mean,
for Dave. We decided work, like real careers, and college were not for us.
and at what point were your parents proud of you?
I mean, they're always proud of me, of course, but, there was I can't tell you when they stopped. "Are you sure you don't wanna go back?" That lasted a lot
They
of
were
years.
encouraging you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought one of the interesting things that you mentioned with me in previous conversations was just your ability to see internal opportunities that helped Vulture grow. So you were able to kind of sense and identify, I don't know, perhaps intuitively or even things that were more measured. And you started to really be able to see some pieces that needed to move in order to prepare for the growth that you guys were experiencing. Could you dive into that a little bit more into what exactly do you mean by that and maybe even some tangible examples?
Yeah, I mean, It's a little bit hard to elaborate because a lot of it happens at a gut level, and I've just learned to trust my instincts in business over time. But some more recent examples in the last, say, 10 years or so, as Vultr was, we launched Vultr, and as it started growing, was really delivering to the long tail of users, developers and small businesses. Our average revenue per user, maybe $10 or $15, but we had thousands and thousands and thousands of users, which was great. It was a nice, stable business with so many customers, and we were, growing very, very quickly. But I could see that we were acquiring customers that were larger, more professional customers, the SMBs that were, had higher expectations, more AWS style expectations. So I could see that we needed to begin catering towards enterprise buyers, very early on. So I decided to form a GRC department, governance, risk, and compliance, which we didn't need at the time. We could have kept doing what we were doing, but I knew that we needed to look around the corner to be prepared for what enterprise expectations really meant. So, I ended up hiring somebody great, this guy Eddie Powell, who brought a lot of tenure and experience in that domain, taught me a lot, and I learned from him. And together we navigated a path to be ready for it with a true enterprise posture to be where we are today, selling to big enterprises. When you do the vendor onboarding process, it's like, okay, let's see your compliance, let's see all your artifacts, all these things that are necessary. We're well prepared for that versus some of the neo clouds today that just spring up with venture capital, and they're not so prepared with on the compliance posture.
How does that look like in your day to day today? So you've been able to prepare for the growth that got you this far, but how does it look like to stay attuned to that instinct in your day to day and still be able to kind of look around the corner for what might be next?
Yeah. So two ways. Well, I mean, one, it all's connected to the customer, right? Looking at what problems the customers are facing and asking us to solve for them. Where when they're onboarding onto Vultr and they're saying, "Hey, at AWS, I've got this knob or whistle, but I don't have that at Vultr." It's like, okay, put that on the feature roadmap, and things like that and then having enough of those conversations, you can develop an intuition about what's really important. I mean, this is just product management, but when you're
Mhm.
depending on the company size, you might not have product management, depending on how many hats you're wearing. Um, uh, and then the other thing is just in conversations in the sales cycle, so before they even try the platform, seeing what these customers are asking for and expectations. I mean, back to the compliance, if they're saying, okay, show me your compliance artifacts. Well, you don't have that. Now you know that you need to either not entertain that size customer or go and build that.
You've talked about Vulture's culture, about it being very collaborative and high trust. How have you guys managed to embed that into the culture? There's certain practices or like a specific vision that you're casting that is bringing the team along behind you guys to act in this direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think across our leadership team, where everybody's willing and interested in doing whatever it takes to be successful, to make our customers successful. And I think kind of setting that example is what it all flows down to. I'm sure I could find some employees that would tell me to leave them alone and this is their domain. But at the end of the day, if I see, an opportunity to, give some insights or some history on a certain subject, I'd like to help, help there or even solving a problem, a technical problem. I mean, I have done it a lot. So, even today, there's a network issue or whatnot, and I'll be able to point that out. So I think people seeing, myself and our CEO and others, reaching across and participating, but in a tactful way in different domains, just to reach the effort of meeting the customer's needs and making sure everybody's successful, I think sets that tone for the culture.
Mm. And with your own role, I mean, you guys were a team of 2 in the beginning,
Mhm.
and now Vulture has how many employees?
It's over 300, around 320 or so.
And you have hired all around the world.
Or mostly the United States. We have a team in India. We decided to invest into India. We have 3 locations. So we initially started with a sales and go-to-market team there. We're just in the beginning of playing with some operational staff there.
So what impresses me is the growth that you've probably experienced yourself as a leader. I always say that building a company is the biggest self-development project that you could ever face because it forces you to grow. If you don't grow, your company doesn't grow.
Mhm.
And how has Vulture challenged you to grow?
I mean, a lot. I mean, it's my identity, it's my baby, it's my favorite thing, it's the thing I love spending my time on. So, I mean, every, kind of new opportunity and situation, and there's a lot of challenging situations, you have HR situations, you have, maybe customer losses or customer challenges that are, defeating, but, it's either, you win and the customer's, successful, or you learn and you figure out what you can do better. So, I don't believe I'm perfect by any measure, and so I love learning new things. I'm just a constant student, just following my intellectual curiosity, and I think that that's helped a lot with, my relationship with customers. It's not just tell me what SKUs you need and how many you need. It's, help me understand why you're using it that way. What would make your experience better if, it's like that over at Google Cloud. It's interesting. Can you show me that? Or, things like that I think strengthen the relationship with the customer, but help me learn, and that kind of radiates into the organization.
As you guys bootstrap the company, which you did, I mean, this raise of 330 million for growth was the first raise.
Series A, yes. Technically, 20 some odd years in. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a bootstrapped company previous to that. What did you prioritize in the growth to be able to sustain being bootstrapped? Like, what was the priority in how you managed resources?
I mean, listen, a company's dead without revenue, right? So, I mean, we were always making sure that we were, revenue, cash flow positive, and running a profitable business. Bootstrap company, you have to be profitable because you don't have, angel investors or somebody else's, balance sheet to rely on. So, having, money in the bank is the guiding principle there. And then after that, I would say it's, prioritizing the higher margin products. So the things that we could sell that we made a higher profit margin were better for us to focus on. Now, an investor, a company led by VCs, or maybe owned by venture capital, might run it differently and say, well, hey, if it's profitable at all, then resource it and go. But if you have limited resources, then you have to prioritize what is, best for margins and cash flow, because that's what you need to reinvest into the growth.
I feel like it's so many founders' growth to raise a Series A, Series B, 30, 300 million, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, how did much did that impact the business? Obviously, it's a lot of money, but what changed, um, after you guys raised that money and were able to start injecting it into the company?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot and a little, right? I mean, organizationally, not much changed because we were already a couple hundred employees and on sort of an enterprise trajectory, building an enterprise sales go-to-market team, a compliance and security focused organization. So, in terms of organizational maturity, I mean, really nothing changed. It was there so that we could do two things. One, we have a cash infusion to go into the capital intensive AI infrastructure market and grow bigger there, and also just announce to the world who we are in a more credible way. Without the investment, people, our financials are private, right? It's a privately held company. We don't announce how much revenue we have, and so forth. So with the investment, and with, being on the Wall Street Journal and saying, revenue numbers and valuation, this sort of thing builds credibility across the market. It's like, okay, I've never heard of Vultr, but I Googled it, and that's interesting, right? So it's a totally different story that gives you, a little bit of wind at your back for some of these sales cycles.
So, we were commenting earlier, it's important for a startup to not look like a startup. So, you guys from the beginning already had a mindset of positioning yourself as a high growth company. Was that a vision? I mean, I might be assuming here, but did you guys already have like this big vision for what you were going to build?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, maybe a couple of years into Vulture was the turning point. So, we've always been running a successful business and growing very quickly. But when we launched the Vulture brand in 2014, we really started growing very fast. And so, just every month seeing our revenues grow, and year over year, being, substantial growth, it was like, okay, this is a real thing. And we need
What
to
was the
take,
percentage? Like, what is substantial growth? We're just curious.
I mean, there was years where we doubled, it's harder to double when you're bigger, but when
Yeah.
you're smaller, doubling is easier. But it's, the growth was very, very material. So seeing that pattern, it was very clear to me, talk about like being able to look around the corner,
Mhm.
like, okay, what do we need to be if we're growing, 50% a year, 100% a year? What do we need to do to be prepared to do that for the next 10 years or 20 years? What's the culture, or what's that future state of the organization going to look like in terms of the org chart, the staff, the departments, the compliance posture, all of it.
I know that one of the big, pivots was for you to start thinking more about enterprise clients. I would say that was somewhat of a pivot, right? To be able to focus.
Absolutely.
Were there other significant pivots that you knew that it was time to make a shift?
Well, when Dave Ananowski decided we were going to make a Vultr, around 2013 is when we started building it, and then launched it in 2014. Um, you know, that that's a new brand. That's a pivot, right? So we kind of instantiated it, birthed the new business within the existing business, um, and then seeing it get immediate traction. You have the intuition on how to resource that. So I'd say that was a decisive pivot. And also before that, when we launched the video game brand, right? Before we were just doing, like selling servers for websites and whatnot. And then we got to get to the video game market was a pivot. So there was, those iterative pivots, and then as you pointed out, building a sales and go-to-market team to sell to enterprises is a very specific motion, and our CEO built out that organization.
So let's talk a little bit about building out the team. Has that been a challenge or a strength? How have you approached it?
I mean, we have a great team. I mean, I absolutely love our staff. I know we would be nowhere without our people, right? Um, And, going back to the fact that I don't know everything and I'm a college dropout, I view the interview process as a real learning opportunity. So, when I'm interviewing somebody, they think that they're trying to, look good for the job, but I'm like, okay, what is this role supposed to do? Like, I think I need this title, So it's like, tell me everything you did in your day to day for the last 10 years, right? So there's a learning experience in hearing that from a few people. You can to develop the patterns, and then it's easy to suss out who the right candidate is to actually lead that organization and define it in your company. Um, Sorry, I forgot where I was.
Yeah, just like some of the challenges of hiring and how you guys have gone about finding the right talent for the company.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so the cultural fit is a really important one. We've had some people in the company in the past that weren't the right cultural fit, or maybe before our culture had enough identity. You find some people that are a little bit alienated from the culture, and that's really that just introduces so much challenge. So, I mean, the key things to hire for ahead of skill and experience are really just like cultural fit, intelligence and empathy. If you have like that, trifecta, you can teach them anything. They'll, assimilate into the organization, and they'll be additive and a net positive, I think.
Feel like empathy is where you get a lot of that connection to the client and understanding, what are some of the challenges and opportunities in the market. How do you guys teach your team to be able to develop that?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a program to teach that, right? I think maybe that comes down to just one-on-one coaching and situational, or reflecting on situations, or, we try to be, try to over communicate without being, stifling and annoying, right? So it's like, okay, let's talk through the situation, or maybe if it's a challenging situation and there's a lot of people, maybe you bring one leader aside and say, I can talk about this in public, but this is my insights into the matter. And maybe it's always hard to see, or just have the kind of presence of mind to look at a situation through somebody else's shoes, but
Mhm.
almost always when you do so, the situation gets better.
Yeah. Culture is really, from what I've experienced, is it trickles down, right? It comes from leadership and trickles down into the company. And you're very much so a doer, get things done, get it resolved. That seems to be very deep in your mindset and how you've been able to kind of work through some difficult challenges. Have there been, you know, really big obstacles that you faced at Vulture that you maybe needed mentorship or to reach out to other people in the industry or experts that that helped you along that journey? Have you reached out beyond Vulture for that growth?
You know, I would say I really haven't, and I think that was a misstep. I probably should have. I think mentorship is wonderful, and I mean, I've had some good mentors by happenstance. Like our current CEO, JJ Cardwell, and Dave Ananowski, the founder. Some great insights and mentorship from them. But they're sort of, it wasn't something that I pursued. I should have pursued, mentorship in a more sort of intentional way because there's a lot of people out there that they don't want anything. They just want to help. They just want to share their experience, and if you can receive that, then it's really good for everybody.
Are there any particular principles that really guide you in really high pressure decision making moments?
Stay calm,
A good one.
I mean, I would say prioritization, really, because when we are faced with maybe a really tough challenge or a really big sale, like giant sale opportunity, it's like my mind immediately slips into the engineering, the architecture. We need to build this. We have to make this product. We have to deploy this infrastructure. All these things that aren't important if we don't make the sale. So it's like, okay, priority number one, let's close the deal. Like, what do you need to get them the contract? Okay, let's do that. Like there's some things like that where, it's easy to kind of slip down into things that are not the priority and miss the priority.
Oh, that's good. Before we open to Q&A, which we're going to in just a moment, I'd love to ask one more question just about your investors. So can you tell us a little bit about who they are and why were they a good fit for Vultr?
Yeah, so the lead investor is Luminarx, and the marquee investor is AMD, who's Nvidia's biggest competitor. We sell infrastructure based on both Nvidia and AMD GPUs, but we felt it was important to have AMD as a partner because we really believe in their position in the ecosystem. Nvidia is the 10,000 pound gorilla, and AMD is the smaller company. They're still a large company, but the smaller company. But that's sort of reflects our situation in the market. We've got AWS and Google and OCI that are the giants, right? And then we have Vultr, who's a measly $3.5 billion company that's competing with these, extremely large, trillion-dollar companies. So we kind of like that synergy. And Luminarx, when we were going through that, you meet a lot of people. You have those boardroom conversations, and it's really just like the energy in the room and the people and the relationships. And the Luminarx team is fantastic. We had just such an outstanding connection with them.
Was the process of kind of defining if, they were going to come in to invest or not, was it a long process? Did you guys have a lot of time to be able to kind of connect also on a one-to-one level to see, hey, is this somebody who I want to be doing business with? Or what did that process unfold? How did it unfold?
I mean, it was over several months, but the time that we spent with that investor and just the overall deal structure proportionally to the size, it wasn't like it was a primary, a change of control deal, for example.
Mhm.
So they're collectively the $333 million is minority. So it's some structural changes with board and things like that, but they're a relatively passive position. So it's good that we have a wonderful relationship with them, but we didn't have that sort of the necessity to really feel that we're going to be deep in our business.
Yeah, no, that makes it a lot more straightforward.
Exactly.
That's good. All right. Well, I would love to hear what's on your mind and see what questions you might have here for David. If you would like to raise your hand, Nordine will be walking around with the microphone.
My name is Manasi, and I have about 7 years of experience in the biotech sector. So, my first part of the question is Vultr planning to ever tap into the genomics domain? The reason I ask that is because just going by numbers, genomics itself is expected to produce about 40 exabytes of data by 2026. For those who don't know what an exabyte is, it's about a million terabytes. So, that's your scale right there. So, biotech companies are scrambling to find solutions to data. So I wanted to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, we are working with and in sales cycles with some genomics companies. There's some genomics companies that are AMD is actually investing in, and Nvidia as well. And sort of that's one place where the investment helps, right? Because if AMD is an investor in another company, then it starts to be part of our deal cycle. So some of our larger AMD clusters are well suited for processing genomics and making advancements there.
And my second part is you being the operations guru at Vultr. I'm a big fan of operations and processes, and I wanted to take your opinion as a small business and aspiring founder. What should one focus on? Is it people, processes, systems, or something altogether? I mean, of course, revenue is the top. what should you focus on as a small business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I think the culture of the team is super important. When it comes to process, I think it's really important to make sure that the process serves the people and the people don't serve the process. When you have it in the wrong way, everybody's disgruntled and unhappy, right? People are people. The situations change. The processes are really, really important to exist. So we have a guiding direction, and some framework. But it needs to be malleable, right? Because situations change. People are a little different. So you need to be able to accommodate for that.
Hi, so the trip from Canada worth the shot. Thank you very much. So, my name is Matt, and I'm a leader of a business in Canada. And if you go back to your early stage as a leader, what would be the 80-20 things that you would do to make sure that you're the best at your job?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, it's a tricky question for me because I'm extremely detail oriented, right? So, I mean, I think it's absolutely right to prioritize on the most important things, which probably are sales, right? But you have to keep those customers happy, and sometimes to keep those customers happy, you have to get into the details. So, when you're running a small business, you are just spinning plates. I don't know how else to say it.
Great talk. Chuck, I have a question about your perspective on the prospects and the implications of enterprise agentic AI at the edge.
Um, that's a really good question, and that's something that I think about a lot because we operate at a lower layer, right? We're the hardware that we make the hardware available via cloud consumption so that it's easy to consume. A little bit up the stack with Kubernetes and things like that. But what you're talking about is more of a PaaS layer with agentic AI, and I think the GPU, the AI market is just so nascent that there's not a killer agentic, ISV software that is driving the demand that will inevitably be there. So when it comes to AI at the edge, I think it is absolutely an inevitable end state. For now, things like chatbots and whatnot are not latency sensitive. Nobody's going to notice if it takes 300 milliseconds or 30 milliseconds for those packets to get back and forth. But the future workloads of AI, they're absolutely going to be much more latency sensitive, where edge computing is important. So I think about putting Vultr in a lot of these telco edge locations, small form bombs that we can make sure that we easily deploy into legacy telcos or even new data centers that fit nicely into very near edge solutions. But the killer agentic app to drive that enterprise value, I'm not sure that it exists just yet, but I'm excited for it.
Right. I'm curious from an operational standpoint, in your most rapidly scaling years, if you ever had a crisis of confidence on how to navigate that and how you overcame it.
Well, I would say imposter syndrome can definitely be a real thing. I mean, like right now, like who am I to be sitting on stage and talking to all you beautiful people? But I think when you're prioritizing the problems or what you need to do in order to just kind of like take that next step, you can get through that, right? So it's like okay, insurmountable, problem in front of you. You have no idea how you're going to do it, but there is something that you can do, and as long as you do that one thing, you can begin navigating the issue. So definitely, hit a lot of challenging situations in my life, work related, where it's just like truly no idea what I'm doing. But you just have to kind of trust that you're there for a reason, and then that your instincts will guide you.
Thanks for being here tonight with us. As you think about the landscape from a strategic perspective, what do you think the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges are for the company going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the AI we have so much opportunity on both sides, the CPU side and the AI side. The GPU market is growing so quickly, and the revenue dollars are so big, so you can grow in big chunks there. And the CPU side, we have so much market share and right to win from the hyperscalers, so we can grow the business very, very fast there. The biggest challenge, I think, is access to capital. So we're still a privately held company. We're not public. We can't just issue new shares to raise capital. So our CEO is comes from the capital market, so we have a lot of things that we do, but just going really fast with capital is probably one of the biggest headwinds.
going back to the very beginning when it was just you and the other gentleman that you were working with at the very beginning, how do you guys prioritize sales and how do you time box that given that you had to support other parts of the business too?
I mean, I think it was just small enough that we really didn't have to think about it. And back then, in the days when it was just he and I, it was just two buddies hanging out doing something that was fun. I mean, we might as well have been like, I don't know, drawing on the walls of a treehouse or something. It was just what we loved to do, and it was fun. We would be drinking beers on a Friday night and typing on the keyboard. Right? It was just a cool thing to do. So time boxing our sales cycles was not on our minds.
I wanted to ask you about the AI spending that we're reading about, and if you see any signs of a bubble. Follow tech very closely, and I've started to read articles on potential bubble in the AI spending boom that we're seeing.
Sure. I assume something is going to happen that feels like a bubble, right? Where it's like, okay, everybody that said there was a bubble will feel like they were right, and there's going to be some sort of correction. Um, but I don't think that's going to suggest that there's not a real business here and a real market. I think there is so much business value to AI and so much revenue to that is being realized and will be realized. I think there's a lot of companies. I mentioned the access to capital. A lot of companies that do very very high risk things with respect to capital. And if any turbulation in the capital markets and their interest rates will inevitably cause some dominoes to fall. So that's when it's going to feel like a bubble. But with the real demand there, I mean, everybody here uses, AI and ChatGPT and things like that. That's real demand. It's driving real revenue. That's not going away. That's not going anywhere. So, there is going to be something that remains, and it's going to be the mature, disciplined companies.
Have you considered, as a cloud service provider, have you considered integrating hybrid classic quantum workflows into what you support?
We haven't really started playing with quantum yet. I mean, we're having some conversations about sort of, future-proof quantum security for data storage, but trying to stay focused on our current products and our current growth trajectory is our priority. I haven't really moved into that domain yet, but it's very interesting.
Building apps is a lot of fun. Deploying, making it available, that's where it gets complicated. A lot of startups have no idea. And all these big players, they have five solutions for one problem. Is it Cloud Run? Is it Cloud Function? Is it Firebase Function? So there are so many options available and a lot of confusion. Is there kind of a consulting piece to Vultr where startups like me or some of my customers, where you can say, hey, this is how you do it? And
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that is a market-wide problem, and I think we can do a lot better in that domain as we kind of increase the size of our, our product marketing and our go-to-market capabilities. We have our Vultr Cloud Alliance where we have some good partnerships, and some of those folks might be able to help you. But I think we could operationalize it in a far more intentional way because I am totally aligned with you. I think getting that right would be a huge opportunity. We have on our near-term roadmap, we're going to be relaunching our marketplace to be able to scale some infrastructure much more easily. Terraform template type of marketplace versus a single instance marketplace. So I'm really excited about what kind of value that can drive. But also in that domain, marketplace vendors will be able to operate infrastructure on behalf of customers in a more managed solution type of way. So I totally agree. I think that there's a need there.
My question has to do with your with vision. When you were way back when starting, you probably didn't look 10 years down the road and said, we'll be at X billion in sales. Can you tell me a little bit about how you were projecting and targeting and planning? Is it annual, 3 years out? How did you organize your vision for the growth of the company?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a better question for Dave Ananowski because I was always kind of head down, focused on getting a job done. When I, jumped ship from my bigger salary in telco to do this, all I knew is that on some horizon in the, foreseeable future, we would build something substantial and awesome. So how big that was, probably back then I was probably measuring in maybe tens of millions of dollars. I thought that was a big number, I suppose. But at this point, it's really just my personal vision and thought work on it is just having the business realize its potential. That seems to change pretty much every year because I feel like wow, we can do more, we can be bigger, we can we can do so many things. And kind of that progression is very fun and empowering for me. But yeah, I don't know. The sky's the limit.
So you mentioned that you were in like a cushy tech job, and I'm in like a similar role right now. But I see the opportunity that is in front of me and in front of us. So let's say you're back in your 21-year-old self, you have this entrepreneurial passion and you love technology and all of that. How would you navigate the market right now? And if you were to say you remove everything that you have right now, what opportunities would you pursue? What opportunities do you see 10 years down the line that you would try to like kind of build towards and stuff?
What a great question, and difficult one to answer. The thing that's coming to mind, I feel like I could answer in a bunch of different ways, but the thing that comes to mind is just follow your passion. Because if you're doing what you love, you don't work a day in your life, right? So I just really what like really think about what that is. If you have another opportunity and you think you could jump ship to go do that, would you be obsessed with it? Would you love it? Would it just be fulfilling to you? And I think kind of, you know, you assessing it through that lens will help find the answer.
I always turn around that quote and I say, if you find what you love, you will work every day of your life.
Yeah.
Hey David, how are you? I'm very interested in the AMD data centers here. How much VRAM do you have total in one of those things?
Uh, I think off the top of it depends on which chip model. I mean, we're at the MI 355X right now, and next year is the MI 450. The number 280 gig of VRAM is coming to mind, but to be honest, I can't remember if that's which specific model that is. I can't remember if that's in the 355, the most current chip, but it's on the like for like basis with NVIDIA, it tends to be a higher VRAM.
You mentioned product management. How do you treat infrastructure as a product?
That's a good question. So, I mean, the UX is a big part of it, just how the customer interfaces with Vultr, whether it's going to be through the Mida Vultr control panel or the API or, ecosystem things like Terraform and whatnot. Um, but it's also what the features of the product are. So it's been a virtual machine. It's like, okay, you've got a Linux instance on the internet. That's cool, but what else can you do with it, right? Can you attach a VPC to it? Can you attach a floating IP address? Can you announce IP addresses with BGP? Can you run Kubernetes with it in containers? And so, yeah, in the cloud ecosystem, there are some kind of broad definitions, but I think it comes down to the UX and the features.
So we are going to wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time. This was really fun. I
It was
love
awesome.
these conversations and these great questions. It allowed for us to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty. So
Thank you
thanks
for
for
having me.
absolutely such a pleasure. Thank you so much. You guys, a round of applause, please, for David. That was another episode of Founder Tactics. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get updates on new episodes, live recordings, and everything happening in our founder community, make sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the podcast. And also, you can head to foundertactics.com to learn more about our work. See you next time.